I'm trying to remember.
The
The
guy
guy he took off.
The guy runs.
Yeah. So
Bad.
there's this chase scene.
Yes, I'm sorry. If the police ever show up and you run, the
Don't
person is
run.
guilty of something.
Yes.
Nothing ever
Yes.
good comes
Yes.
from running away from the police because you're not going to get away.
Welcome to the Bookish Introverts podcast. Join host Amazon bestselling author Brett Nelson and avid reader Melanie Dyer as they dive in to review books they've read, then chat with the amazing authors behind them. Quiet minds, big bookshelves. You don't want to miss it.
And I think about a
Yeah.
year has
It
passed.
jumps to like 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was what it started in 2004.
2003, 2004.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
So like a little time jump, which threw me. I was like, wait a minute. Because, because you're kind of hopeful. They get your hopes up that they're going to spark up a new relationship between Jordan and, because me being a romantic, like I do like the romance aspect of it. So,
yeah.
You're starting to get hope, like, oh, you see it coming, like, yeah, they're gonna get back together.
Yeah.
So then it's just like, and I wasn't seeing a time jump. I did not think that was gonna happen. That threw me.
Yeah.
And so then it was like, so she goes back to Quantico.
And it's kind of rare for books to have. I mean, this book literally was over the span of 10, 15 years.
Yeah, because the next time jump is like over 10 years.
Yeah. So, and it's very rare to have books with that kind of time jumps. So, I mean, in my Christmas book, I wrote, like, I had a time jump between Christmas and New Year's, and I got a bad reviewer I'm like,
that's like
it was
a couple of weeks.
It was like a week. Really?
It's like, hey, lady, try 10 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway.
But as a reader, I was hopeful that they were going to spark up their relationship back up again. And then it was like, well, a year goes by and they've parted ways yet again.
Yeah.
So there's their first kind of disappointment. Like,
and apparently in that year and a half, they sort of fell. They weren't in contact.
Right. Yeah. They kind of were. Again, I would say estranged, where they weren't really keeping tabs with one another or keeping in contact with one another. So I'm like, well, okay, well, that didn't work out like I thought it would.
Exactly, yeah. And a new girl has disappeared, and she fits the profile. She's blonde, 15, 16 years old. And she's the fifth girl that has been missing that they know of in this amount of time. She was last seen by a fellow student, again, like we were just talking about, getting into a black car, and apparently under no distress. Like she wasn't pulled into the car. Yeah. She wasn't fighting to get away from anyone. So this is where they start the thought process of, I wonder if maybe this person is in law enforcement, because I think, isn't this the time where they're in a library? The librarian kind of sees lights flickering on the wall.
Well, I feel like that's a little bit.
Is that later? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, but anyway, yeah. So when this girl goes missing, they contact the FBI, and which brings Jordan back into the story. Yeah, back to Nashville.
And also, a little side note is that her mom got sick. Mm-hmm. So the first time when she came back to work on the investigation, the very first time that she's introduced to us, and she comes to Nashville to work on that with what's his name? Garrett. And so we find out that her mom is sick. And then over that span of time, they found out that her mom has cancer and she's dying. Mm-hmm. So now that she's back, the mom, I think, is about to pass, like is in hospice, about to pass away or something. Yeah. Yeah. And so Jordan's kind of on the outskirts of this one right now because she's dealing with her mom's
family
illness. And and they do kind of reconnect, Garrett and Jordan. Like, he still cares about her, obviously, and he's checking in on her. They go whenever they go for a walk to, he's like, you've been staying up with your mom, because they're like vigilant, like a vigilance of, taking turns being by her bedside, like overnight, so she's not sleeping well and she's dealing with all this. And it's like, let's go for a walk. So they go for this walk, and they're, and you just, like, so many times in the book they come, and I think they held hands. I remember, I made a note of that. I was like, oh, they held hands. And then at the end of the walk, they kissed. Yeah. So that was the first time that, as the reader, like, oh, there's, they're not just thinking it, like something physical has happened between them. They held hands on the walk, and then at the end of it, they kiss, like passionate kiss. And you're like, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
which for me, when it comes to romance, I can appreciate a slow burn, because And I know there are some situations where people are just like, they fall madly in love with each other from the first time they see each other. But I feel like this approach is more realistic.
Yeah. As a reader, I was frustrated by like just the lack of communication between them. Like all one of them had to do would be like, hey, you want to maybe try to start something up again? Like, I still have feelings for you.
Yeah.
But no, they would think it, but they would never say it.
Well, and I kind of feel like Jordan is a closed book. Jordan is very keep people at arm's distance.
Yeah, and she's definitely chosen her career over having a relationship, over getting married, over having a family,
over everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's just, she's devoted to her job, and everything else is secondary.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So I, as a reader, I was frustrated by like their lack of ability to just vocalize the thoughts they were having. And because it was so many close calls. Like, I think I'm ready to tell him how I feel, or I think I'm ready to tell her how I feel. And then something would happen. Yeah. And then another time jump.
Well, see, and that's kind of what I liked about it, because I'm not a romance. I do not like romance. And so like, I'm like, okay, let's have as much as little about that in there as possible. So it's funny how readers are so different.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm a romantic, so I'm like, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell them how you feel.
Yeah, and it would have made things easier if they had just been like, I love you. What are we going to do about this?
Well, yeah, all they had to do is have an honest conversation with each other. Seriously.
But then again, when you're writing a book, though, you kind of want that tension.
Yes.
You want that sort of
as an
romantic
author, she
tension.
did the right thing by kind of drawing it out. And it was so drawn out.
It was drawn out, yes. Yeah.
So the girl was Amber Boyd. Mm-hmm. That was her name. And so that's where Nikki Boyd comes in, because that's her sister.
Yes.
And I think she's the one, she was going to pick her up, and when she went to pick her up, she wasn't there.
She wasn't there.
Yeah.
And they find a Polaroid, of course. And is this the one? Yeah, they didn't find her body.
Right.
But they did find the Polaroid, which deviates a little from the
because typically they find both.
Typically,
but there was at least one other girl that they never found the body.
Yes, there is one other one where they never found the body.
Yeah. So now I think it's two bodies that they've not found, but have found a Polaroid, I think.
Yeah. But they do find a bag of marijuana at the crime scene. And the fingerprints, they send it for fingerprints, and it comes back to a guy who works at a gym. He's a marathon runner. And he owns the smoking gun for him is he owns a black Crown Victoria. Well, the victim was seen getting into a black car.
Yep.
So of course that, Garrett sort of plows in, oh, this has got to be him because he's black, and Nikki tends to be more he's not the only person in town that drives a black car, so maybe we ought to not, they're good balance for each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So of course they get to the gym, they go to the gym where he works, and what happens?
Well, I'm trying to remember.
The guy
he took off.
The guy runs.
Yeah. So there's a chase scene.
Yes. I'm sorry. If the police ever show up and you run, the person is guilty of something.
Yes.
Nothing ever good comes from running away from the police, because you're not going to get away.
No, and he didn't. They caught him.
Yeah. And so we're not going to say a whole lot about that because we don't want to give spoilers. So maybe he's the person, maybe they're looking for, and maybe he's not. So, but she did mention in here that, and this was sort of I don't know if this is a true statistic. I bet it probably is. According to this, it said there's over 800,000 missing persons in the NCIC database, which is a missing persons database.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
That's a lot.
800,000 people in the world. I don't know if that's the world or the country.
Well, and think about this. That's just the ones that
they know about. Yeah. I was like, my gosh.
That's been reported.
We need to fall down on our knees every day and thank God that we make it from work and back, or from the grocery store and back, because that is a staggering statistic.
Well, I didn't write it down, but some of the statistics about most of these abductions are from someone they know, like maybe even a family member.
Yeah.
Actually, it's a very small percent that was a stranger abducted someone they didn't know.
Yeah, a lot of times
it's
and I actually did write that down in here somewhere. Usually cases like this, it's revenge from someone it's a love situation,
or like a custody type thing.
Yeah, there's or some sort of domestic issue.
Yeah.
So apparently a lot of situations like this, it's not a stranger, it's somebody, it's someone you know.
Yeah. So that kind of surprised me a little
bit. Which again
bit.
is scary because it's like, who do I know that wants to kill me? I'm sure there's several because I could be joined.
Well, another aspect of this was they had kind of determined that this guy might be someone that they knew. They were trying to decide, like, have they met this person before? Mm-hmm. And in one of these,
and if that's the case, they need to find out what that commonality is, because this is 5 victims, and so why would one person want to kill all these victims?
Yeah, and in one of I can't remember exactly which one and where it is in the book, but they were saying that they thought they had met the person, because one girl got away.
Yes,
she was abducted and she ran away, got away. And she said, because I think Garrett went to talk to her. Remember, they were like had a horse farm or something, and she was out at the barn with the horse.
Okay,
he went to talk to her.
Okay, I think this was the girl. This is one girl that survived. That got away.
Yeah, got away.
And this is one thing and I know when you go through something like that, it's a very traumatic event, and you don't want to relive it. You just want to go on with life. Well, the mother, when they, of course, as all this is building up, they're like, well, I think we need to go back and talk to this girl. Well, the mom and the girl, but especially the mom, they were very aggressive against.
They're like, I don't want her to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, she's been through enough, and I don't want her reliving this, which I totally get. But part of me is like, okay, if something like that happened to me, I would almost want to. I mean, to me, that would be because you want that person caught.
Well, exactly.
I mean, can you imagine surviving something like that? If it was me, I would live in fear that, okay, the person didn't get to follow through with their plans, so are they going to come back and try to get me again?
That's true.
That's true. So for me, I would feel some sort of comfort in knowing that the police are still trying to,
but then try to put yourself in like the headspace of a teenage girl between 14 or 16 years old and being abducted. I mean, going through the trauma.
It's very traumatic.
Knowing that you probably came really close to dying. And she's very fortunate that she didn't, that she got away.
Yeah.
But just trying, I mean, because they talk about how it's kind of reliving the drama, the trauma every time you talk about it, so I understand not wanting to continue to talk about it. But at the same time, these investigators need something to go by. They need something to go on. Like they just don't have anything, hardly anything at all. And it's like they're beating their head up against the wall because they can't find this guy. They don't know who it is. They're not any closer to finding out who it is than they were a couple years ago or whatever.
And at this point, we're like, what, 5 years into since So they go and talk to this girl, and then guess what? It jumps to 8 months later.
Of course it does.
She shows up in Nashville to meet Garrett after another girl has gone missing. And the witness saw this is where the witness saw the girl getting into a car at the library, a dark SUV. And of course, the parents say she would never get into a car with a stranger. And then while Garrett and Jordan are talking to the parents, Garrett sees a man talking to a group of people because there's apparently some sort of vigil going on at the family's house. So he tells Jordan that he saw that same man at a vigil for one of the other girls at their home.
Yeah.
And
that was a few years ago.
And that was a few years ago. Yeah. So that sort of
but he remembered. It sparked a memory that he'd seen this person before.
Yeah. So that gives him, another little lead to go on. And this is where Nikki Boyd comes in. We find out that they were in the police academy. We've already talked about that. So she sort of comes into the story.
Well, Nikki decided, because she was like a school teacher, and then when her sister got abducted and then never found her, that prompted her to join the police academy. She's like, it changed her career path. So she became like a police officer, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And this case kind of causes Jordan and Garrett to clash a little because he's gung ho. Okay, this guy, he's connected to several cases. Yep. Well, Jordan says this is a false lead.
Yeah.
And she gets irritated because he's focused on it.
Yes. But he's like got that gut instinct like you talked about.
Yeah.
Like, okay, if this guy was at 2 different families, like a couple years apart at their home, at
that's
their,
a valid
vigil,
lead. Yeah.
You know, or whatever it was. Well, you know, because like people just show up to try to help in some way, you know, because they're still missing. They're hoping they're still alive somewhere, that they could be found. And so it's like for him the same man to be at 2 different places.
That feels like more than a coincidence.
Yeah. And then also there was a third, because it was a picture of a vigil for one of the other girls that he saw him in the picture.
Yeah. You know, and part of me feels like, okay, they're saying this person is very smart, very intelligent, very perfectionist. So wouldn't it be stupid to continue to show up at the vigils?
Right.
That they say statistically, a lot of times murderers will show up at the funerals of the person they murdered. So I'm like,
well, they talked about that. How that's kind of
it's
I don't know if it's like a gratification for them in some way.
What they did.
Yes.
What
they want
the chaos they've caused.
If they're gratified in some way by doing it and by being there, no one knowing that they're the one.
Exactly. It gives them a sense of power that the person who did it here, they're looking for this person.
And I'm right here and they don't know. Yeah. And so he's suspicious and he's like, I got to find out who this guy is. And so he puts people on it, you know, other officers or whatever. He's like, well, you we've got to figure out who this is. So they find a name where he works and like, okay, let's find connections here. Does he have connections with all of these families or, you know, whatever?
Yeah. And there is sort of a little connection there because he's in finance.
Like a financial investor or whatever. And he, at least those 2 families for sure.
Yeah.
The dad, you know, he helped the dads with their finances or something.
Yeah.
You know, of 2 of the victims.
Yeah. We won't spoil anything about whether it's him or not. But Jordan does, and I can't remember where she was if this happened, but she was somewhere in a parking garage and a brick is thrown through her window and there's a note attached. Do you remember what the note said?
You'll never find her? Or
you'll never find her alive. You'll never find her alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, which is, you know,
which is scary. Yeah. So that really was the first time that kind of, I mean, because up to this point, it's something that has already happened that they're finding after the fact. They're finding a body, you know, a day or 2 after it, you know, or whatever. Yeah. They're, you know, finding these things after they've already happened. This is something active. This is something that's happening in real time that like he's somewhere in this parking garage. Like, you know, she's pulling her gun. She's like, we're locking it down. We're going to try to catch this guy, you know, obviously he got away, but like, this is the first time that it's like, oh my goodness, like this is an active threat to her, to them, like the investigators. Yeah. Because up to this point, it was just, there was a detachment. It was just, you know, he's killing these random girls and they're coming in and they're investigating it.
Yeah.
You know,
this was a very aggressive. Yeah. Sort of change.
So this is when it starts to ramp up.
Yes. Yeah. At this point, things are starting to get really, really, the momentum's picking up. Yeah. So there was one thing that I noted here that I kind of wanted to briefly touch on, and it may be kind of silly, but somebody tells Garrett in the book that he couldn't possibly understand the frustration of not being able to find the serial killer abductor because he doesn't have kids of his own. Yeah. That irritated me. You know, I don't have kids.
Right. Same.
But I have god kids that I love more than life itself. And anybody would have to kill me to get to my god kids.
Right.
You know, and so like, I just don't feel like you have to have experienced something. I feel like that's and I've heard people say it, oh, well, you don't have kids, so you can't know. You can't understand how this feels. And to an extent, I think that is true. Right. But I think that is such an arrogant thing to say to someone.
It is. And I feel like it's misguided.
Yeah.
You know, kind of stereotypical thing that people say.
And maybe it's something people just say out of grief.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and they probably really think that. I mean, you know, even as like a single person and like it's hard to be kind of stereotyped. Yeah. You know, when like if you're single, you know, people just, I don't know. It's like you're in your own like group or class or like there's, I don't know. There's just you don't quite fit with married couples,
no,
or
and that's
whatever.
why it's so hard in church, because most people have that complete nuclear family, and it's like, so as a single person in church, I'm just like, I feel like
it's like, where do
I'm
I
on
fit?
the outside looking in.
Yes, I totally agree. Which I'm married now, but I was, I didn't get married till I was like 41.
Well, you and I used to be in a singles group together was it at Calvary? I think it was at Calvary.
Well, I don't think we were there at the same time.
Oh, were we not? Okay.
No.
So I guess that you weren't there. Yeah. We had a singles group, and it did not take me long. That was the first time I ever participated in a singles group.
Yeah.
And it did not take me long to realize I absolutely loathe singles groups.
I agree. Well, it's kind of like you're perpetuating perpetuating that the thought process of you're different than me. Yes. You don't belong in my group. You be over there in that group.
It puts you in that little clique. But and maybe I'm just different from other people. I'm content. For the most part, I'm content in my singleness. So I don't feel like something is particularly missing from my life, And in the singles group, I always felt like people were coming after you. People want, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's almost like, okay, all the single people are here, so this is who I have to choose from.
Well, and they're always trying to set you up.
Yes.
Like, doesn't that drive you crazy?
Drives me insane.
Well, because first of all, they're basically saying there's something wrong with you because you're single. There's something missing in your life because you're single.
And I'm like, okay, Paul even said, if at all possible, stay single.
Yeah.
That's why.
Because it would be easier.
If you're not content being single, that's one thing. But I'm content being single. But it's almost like everybody thinks something's wrong with you.
Yes.
And even to this day, I see people, and I know they don't mean anything by it, but they'll be like, are you not ever going to get married? Well,
it's like, well, maybe I won't. And then is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Does that mean that I'm any less
do I have like the scarlet letter on my forehead?
Well, I mean, yes, I lived it for long enough that I can absolutely 100% relate because it's almost like you're not good enough. You're not a whole person. It's like, no, I am. I'm a whole person.
Exactly.
And I'm worthy of love, and I'm good enough. And like, if I choose to live this lifestyle, what is it to you?
Yeah. If being single is
like, why does that bother people so much?
No, well, it's because there's a societal standard of getting married and having kids. And God did tell us, go into the world and multiply. You can't do that unless you're I mean, you can do that, but if you do it according to God's standard.
But
you can't do that unless you're married.
And for me, it really wasn't like a choice that I made for myself. Like, I wanted to get married. I didn't want to be single, but I just was. And it's like, but is that okay? Is that okay? Like, can I not just be who I am in the season that I'm in? Maybe I will get married someday. And I did. Yeah. But it's like, can I just be okay with where I'm at now in life? Because I'm trying to live the best life I can. Yeah. I'm trying to be active in church. I have a job. I have extracurricular activities. Like I'm being the best version of me that I know how to be. Is that not enough? Exactly. Because it's like people are telling you that it's not enough.
Yeah. And if I'm content at it, you need to be content in me, and if I never get married, that's fine too. Yeah. I'll just be that cranky, 60-year-old man that throws Reese's peanut butter cups at Halloween trick-or-treaters.
So we went off on a tangent there, and the same goes with being childless, not having children, because people treat you differently about that too.
Melissa and I were with you when it was before you were married. It was right around Christmas time. And see, this is how obtuse I am about things sometimes. You and me and Melissa had gone out.
I remember this. I think we were like Chapters in Maine.
We were at Chapters on Maine, and you were texting. Well,
my now husband.
Yeah, I'm a guy. I'm obtuse. I didn't catch up on it, but Melissa goes, she's texting a guy.
Yeah, and I was.
And I was like, what? And she goes, look at her face. She's got a guy. She's just not telling anyone. And she even asked you about it. I can't remember if you fessed up at that point or not. But I'm like, okay, see, like that.
That's kind of keeping it a secret.
It totally went over my head. Melissa was like, girl.
She got it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm so thankful that I'm married now. I love my husband. I'm thankful that I waited for the right one. I didn't just jump into, the first one that came along, or whatever. But so I feel like that's an important little, what is it? A PSA? Is that what it's called?
Public service. Yeah, PSA.
There's a little PSA for all the singles out there that.
Or if you're in the medical field, that also means prostatic PSA, prostate specific antigen.
Oh, okay.
It's a blood test.
Not
but
that
that's
one.
not the
Not
one we're
that
talking
one.
about.
But you have a right to just have a season of singleness. If it is just a season, if that's how you want to live the rest of your life, you have a right to live like that. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're a whole person. You're complete. You can have a fulfilling life as a single person.
Yeah.
But even if it is just a season for you, figure out who you are as an individual, not who you are as attached to someone else, or, in a relationship, like that people identify as, well, I'm this person's wife, or I'm this person's girlfriend, I'm in this relationship. Just figure out who you are as a person, as an individual. Who did Christ create you to be? What is your purpose in life? Because you have one. You're not worthless because you're single. You have purpose, you have meaning, you have fulfillment. You can have those things. In your life.
Being single really does fit into my life now because, I work full time. I when I come home at night, I get to focus on my writing because right now that's a passion in my life. I wouldn't be able to do that if I had a wife and 2 kids running around. I would have to focus on, and I'm not a best-selling author, and it probably may never be
someday,
but still.
But that's
where I go back to where Paul said, if you have to marry to stay virtuous, do it. But if you don't have to, don't do it. It's better. He says it's better to be single. But it's better to marry than to burn. I think that's I think that's
to burn with passion.
The burn with passion.
Definitely. So I've lived both. So I'm experiencing now. I'm newly married, 3 years now. So I'm experiencing that for the first time. I'm learning and growing and being a wife and having a spouse and a partner, and that's new. That's different. That you do have to be selfless. You do have to make compromises, and so it's its whole new thing. But so I'm thankful for my season of singleness, because I wasn't always thankful for it. I hated it at times. I loathed it. But I learned so much from it. I grew so much.
Well, and I think people like you that had, because some people, like, they get out of high school and boom, three months later they're married. You have a whole new perspective on people like that, because you had a longer season of singleness before you got married.
Very long season.
So anyway,
all right, back to the book.
So they find this guy who they think it is, and then after the interrogation, they get a call that the victim's body has been found. So we're at this point.
Okay, well, let's back up a little bit, because so Garrett is zeroed in on this, and can we say what his name is? That's not a spoiler. So Jason Fisher is the person that he has pinpointed. He's figured out this is the person that was at these people's homes when he went at two different time frames. He noticed that this man was at these people's homes, and then he noticed a picture of him at this other one's vigil. So he finds out that.
So in Garrett's side, this is a very valid lead.
Yes, and so he's
probably their biggest lead.
Resources to try to pursue this. They bring him in for questioning. So, but in the meantime, they get this other lead. And I'm trying to think what that was. It was because a nurse, when she was at a stoplight and a car pulls up beside her and she looks over and she sees the girl in the car. She didn't think anything about it until after on the news she saw the picture of the girl.
And of course you wouldn't until you have a reason.
And she said, I saw her. So Jordan goes to talk to her, gets a lead from her about the make and model of the vehicle that she was in earlier that day. So we know she's still alive at this point. So that's encouraging, and the vehicle that she was in. Now, of course, did you see it, the man that was driving? No, of course not. Oh my Lord. So she has this lead. Jordan saying we need to pursue this. Garrett is saying I want to pursue this Fisher guy, because I am a hound on this. Like this is all I can think about is this guy. I have a hunch, I have a feeling. So they're kind of conflicted
Which as a reader,
what lead to pursue.
Yeah, which as a reader, that's the kind of dynamic that keeps you reading, because you're like, okay, which one is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, overall, the police department or whatever, they're pursuing both leads. So you've got people pursuing that, you've got people pursuing this, but instead of maybe all of their pursuit being on just this one lead, they're kind of divided between the two.
Well, that's what you kind of have to do.
Yeah, because what else can you do?
You can't let because what if you
can't let one go?
What if you take your focus off this one, and this is the one it actually is?
And so, so they bring him in for questioning. While he was in for questioning, they get, or like shortly thereafter, they get a call that they found her body, and she had just, like, someone heard the gunshot, and so she had just been shot like an hour prior to that or something. So the time frame of, they had, was it Jason Fisher? They had Jason Fisher in the interrogating room talking to him while she was being murdered, an hour away or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, well, he can't be the murderer, because he literally was here with us.
Sorry, guys, that is a major spoiler.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. Yeah, that's why I was like, I'm trying to tiptoe around major spoilers.
Sorry.
That's all right. Yeah.
So, well, it's kind of important to talk about, because Garrett, when he finds all of this out, and it kind of, the revelation of it all, like, oh my gosh, I was wrong about him. He can't be the murderer, because he was, that obviously he could not have killed her, because he was with us. Mm-hmm. So he felt so distraught. He took so much blame on himself, because he blamed himself for her dying. He said, if I had followed the right lead, maybe she wouldn't have died. If we had focused on this other lead instead of focusing on Jason Fisher.
Yeah.
Maybe we could have found her before. And so he decided, I'm done. I can't do this anymore.
At this point,
I'm done with law enforcement.
He's frustrated. Yeah.
So he's like, I'm going back to being a lawyer. I can't do this anymore.
And guess what? He does it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he decides to quit. And then this is where the story jumps 10 years. I'm like, 10 years.
I know. I was like, come on.
That is a huge jump for a novel.
And yet again, the romance aspect of it
still hasn't really happened.
Because, he was so close to confessing his love, and then this happens, and then he's all, that throws them off. And so he's not able to confess to her that he loves her, and he wants to start up a relationship with her again.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen.
And so they go 10 years.
10 years without
any contact.
Yeah. Without having a relationship yet again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Missed opportunity.
A missed opportunity. Yeah, so we find out that he's a lawyer. He's quit the FBI. He's a lawyer. He works with a nonprofit organization to make sure they're in compliance with state and federal laws. And I just have to say, that sounds like a most boring job a person could have.
Yes.
I know we need people to do stuff like that, but
yeah. Well, and he's also doing like pro bono work for, poor
people
need that couldn't afford
lawyer services,
for whatever.
But can't afford it.
Yeah.
So that's a noble cause. That compared to being in the FBI, this is a snooze fest of a job.
And he's like, the office that he's in is like run down in like a bad part of town, and he like sleeps on the couch. He, because he doesn't want to go home and be alone to a lonely house, nobody go home to.
But this kind of does, in a way, I'm kind of glad she wrote it this way, because it kind of sheds a light on how traumatic it is for people that do these crime investigations, how traumatic and frustrating it is for them to be so stuck that you can't find who you're trying to find.
Yeah.
Because you really do, I imagine, start to feel like, oh my gosh, this killer is smarter than we are. Especially when it's been a decade or more. It's been like, at this point, it's been like,
well, he's winning.
Years.
He's winning. They're losing.
That's it.
100%.
Yeah. So it kind of sheds the light on that. Like he literally got so defeated in it that he literally quit his passion and took this boring job. So another girl comes up missing. and the Sam, which is Garrett's boss, a former boss with the FBI, he decides he wants to get the team back together, which includes Garrett and Jordan, all these people, because I think in this decade, maybe I don't get the sense that there were any killings.
No, that's what I was about to say. It's noteworthy to say that there hasn't been any abductions or any
so there hasn't been
murders
anything else to
for
go
about
on.
10 years.
So it's kind of fizzled out. Yeah. So he decides, okay, this has happened again. We've got to get the original team back, which of course brings Jordan and Garrett back together. So they get on the trail of someone that they think is the abductor, and they find a house that's in a trust that ties back to the person they think may be the abductor.
Yeah.
So they go to see this person. Her name is Rose, and the person that they suspect, she is the half sister of that person. And there's sort of a little story on them. They were both
the
foster children. They were in the foster system. So this is their first really kind of big lead.
Yeah. That really is the biggest one they've had, the biggest break in the case that they've had.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think of like what kind of led up to it. I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember. But it kind of happened through this house.
I remember now. Because there was an inmate that said he had a fellow inmate that was confessing that he was the abductor. He was the one that did these. So he had kind of like a jailhouse confessional from a fellow inmate. That's what it was.
Yeah. So that's kind of what started it. When they leave Rose's house, Jordan gets a call that there's been an attempted kidnapping and a missing girl they believe is connected to the angel abductor. The victim called 911 and told them that a man shoved her into the car and took her picture. And the man told her that she looked like an angel, which is kind of a crucial piece because.
And I don't know that we've mentioned that to this point.
The media,
but that's what they've dubbed him as the angel.
The media has dubbed him the angel abductor. So
they all had blonde hair and they were pretty and looked like an angel.
Yeah, they looked like an angel. And I think one of the girls says that the abductor told her, "You look like an angel." Yeah. So anyway, she managed to get out of the car and run. And so they sort of focused their search for her on a street in Nashville. It's full of people. And they don't find the girl, but they do find her cell phone.
Yes.
Or they find a cell phone.
Yep. No, they know it's hers.
Yeah, they tracked her by GPS. So this is a little bit of a spoiler, so I'm not sure.
I feel like we can't talk about it without giving some spoilers.
I don't really want to, because that's kind of a major spoiler, so we're going to kind of gloss over that. So anyway,
but it was a setup.
At this point, it's getting hard to talk about because anything we talk about could be a spoiler. So we're going to be try very hard to not give you guys any spoilers.
Well, it was a setup.
Yeah.
So there actually wasn't a girl that was abducted and had called 911. It was they had lured them to this place, and it was like downtown. There was like a music festival. It was crowded.
Yeah.
And then there's a gunshot.
Yes, and this is kind of where we find out that the perpetrator may be targeting the team. They're them and their family members. Yeah, so that's another little twist in it because up until this point, nothing like that has ever happened. So
so now is when she turns it up.
Yes.
Like 10 notches. It's like it is intense. It's because it's like one thing after the next. That's now it's happening to them because one
which
of them
makes it a whole different story.
Little spoiler, but can I say one of them die? Like the gunshot that's heard in the square or wherever.
Somebody dies. Yeah.
One of the law enforcement officers was shot and died. So this has turned personal. They can tell they're being targeted. They go back to Rose's house because she called them and was upset and wanted to talk to them. They go back to her house. There's like a tripwire that Garrett barely sees it, and they duck down and the whole house explodes.
Yeah, they just barely miss being exploded. Yeah.
Yes, they were targeted. They knew that was meant to kill them, and it very well could have.
Yes.
Thankfully, there is the house is still intact, and they were able to go in once it cleared up and stuff because it was a fire and things.
Yeah.
And they found a room that, I mean, how much? I don't know how much I should say.
Yeah. Well, they find a room that shows evidence that someone that lived in this house, we won't say who, someone in this house
was the serial killer.
So they find evidence. Yeah.
Yes, pictures of the
victims. So they, at this point, they know,
they have determined, they know who the abductor, and they know that he's actually dead.
Yes.
Now, can we reveal that? Well, I just did.
Yeah, you just did. So and
so
then
they know, they have figured out this was the person that was the angel abductor, and they know now that he's actually dead.
And then after this happens, guess what? Another girl goes missing.
Yeah. So it's like, well, is that a copycat? What's going on?
Yeah, because they're like, what's going on? Another girl goes missing. So they find this out while they're Jordan has a guy, another cop that's driving her, and they get into a car accident.
Right. And she calls her family, tells them to get out of town.
Yes.
Because Sam's wife,
their families are being targeted.
Yes, because his wife was at home. Somebody broke into their house, and thankfully she was okay.
Yeah, one of the cops was murdered. Yeah. So they're starting to take protective measures because they not only are girls being abducted, now it's their families.
Well, they know they're being
personal
targeted. Yes.
Yeah.
And so she goes to her sister's house to get some migraine medicine or whatever, and because Garrett chose not to go with her, but he wanted an officer to take her.
Yes.
And so
because they're being careful for their own lives now.
Yeah. And so, she gets back in the cop car, and then they get T-boned.
Yeah.
And then Garrett gets a phone call, or he's like, where is she? She's supposed to be here by now. They find out there was an accident and she's missing.
Yes. The guy, the police officer that was driving her has amnesia,
so
and Jordan is missing. So now they're not only looking for victims, Jordan has also become one of the victims.
She is now a victim.
She is now a victim.
So there's Jordan, and then there's one girl. So now we're
they're two
looking for
together.
An abducted girl. There's an abducted girl, newly abducted. They're looking for her. They're looking for Jordan.
Yeah. And
they do a little bit more digging. They find somehow, thank the Lord, they find another property that was owned by the guy that they now know was the abductor.
Yeah, well, and they tracked it through GPS tagged photos. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm not a techie person. I'm guessing they were digital photos that
can somehow
so that's how they found the property.
And so it's like I said, it's at this point very intense. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh. And so
Jordan sees a picture of the property and he recognizes it. Yeah. He doesn't know from where, but
Garrett.
Gordon, Garrett. So he recognizes it, and he thinks, okay, this has got to be where.
Yeah, so
this could be where Jordan and the girl is.
They're headed out there.
So they're headed out there,
and other officers, and so he does. So it's like dark. There's you can't flip on a light. So there's a flashlight looking, and he does find Jordan. Mm-hmm. She has been shot in the stomach, and so she's losing blood. So they're trying to stabilize her. Thankfully, there's paramedics not far behind, and so they get and she's like, "Go find what was the girl's name?
Go find the girl.
Whatever her name
Kelsey.
was. Kelsey. Okay. There's so many girls' names. It's hard to keep them all straight.
Yeah.
But it's like, go find her. I hope she's still alive. And so they're searching in the woods.
And of course he's pulled because he wants to find the girl, but he's in love with Jordan. And so he wants to go with her and make sure she's okay. Yeah.
But to make this make sense and without giving it away, there's obviously an accomplice. So we'll just throw that out there because we know that the original serial killer is dead. We know that. But he has an accomplice, so it's the accomplice.
But again, they don't know. Is this a copycat? They don't know exactly what's going on.
Yeah, and then another thing that we've kind of forgot to mention was they did realize. I think they finally did realize that he was posing as a police officer to lure the girls into his car. So that I guess a little noteworthy thing to say. But So that's why they were willingly getting into his car with him, because he had like the flashing light thing they'd got off of eBay or something.
Yeah.
But so so Garrett's searching the woods, praying. He's praying to God, like, please let me find her alive. Please, please, please. So then it goes to the girl with the accomplice.
The abductor, yes.
And she's like praying, God help me, please. And God said, run, or something said run.
Yeah.
So she takes off, and the person's pursuing her, and she's hiding. And so it's kind of like, she can hear dogs. Mm-hmm. She can hear search dogs coming, and she's like, they're coming to find me, please let them find me first before she finds me.
Yes.
And then who comes upon her? It is Garrett. Garrett finds her.
Garrett comes in to save the day.
And so they have a confrontation with the bad
abductor.
Guy. Yeah. The abductor. There's a confrontation, and here comes more police officers. And so the abductor surrenders, and it's over. It's finally over. They've caught the serial killer. They know who the accomplice was. They have them in
girl's
custody,
alive.
arrested. The girl is alive. Jordan's gonna make it, because they were worried about her, whether she was gonna make it or not.
Well, and he actually gets a call that you need to get to the hospital because they don't know if she's gonna make it or not.
Because it's a little touch and go.
Yeah.
He'd lost a lot of blood. So of course you knew she was gonna make it.
Of course, yeah.
So towards the end there, they her and Garrett, and of course, so after all this time, Garrett has finally said, you know what, life's too short. I am going to finally confess my love to Jordan.
And it only took 350 pages.
Yeah, it only took, 15 years or something.
15 years, yeah.
So he does. He's like, I love you. I want to be with you. Even like, will you marry me? She's in the hospital bed. And so she says, while she's doped up. Yes, I will marry. So, you finally get that happy ending. You do get your happy wanted. Ending. They do end up together, even though, good Lord, it took forever to get there.
Yeah.
But
that's all right. To me, that was part of the fun of it. Yeah. I mean, they're stories like this, you always know. I mean, almost always. Mm-hmm. You get the guy gets his girl at the end. So there was really no question of that, but sometimes it's fun just to read the obstacles that stand in the way of it. Yeah. That's part of the fun of it. But without giving any spoilers, were you surprised by who the abductor was?
Well, because as a reader, the whole time you're trying to like, oh, can I figure out who it is?
Yeah.
I kind of felt like, they'd kind of left something hanging, and I kind of felt like, maybe they were onto something there, and they just didn't pursue it any further. So I kind of felt like, that was.
Yeah. One thing, I read a lot of books in this genre, the thriller, mystery, thriller, suspense. So I've read a lot of books like this. And one thing that was different about this book that's different in most books I've read is that there were several sort of they call them red herrings along the way. It's the authors throw people like in
a false lead.
Yeah. And she pretty much, with every red herring, they were pretty much, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can say that without it being a
giveaway.
Without it being a giveaway. Yeah, I better not say that. Brett, delete that out. The way she wrote this kind of deviated from the way
that
most people write it. Yeah, usually, I really want to say this, but typically when it comes to red herrings in a book, you don't know, like there are 3 or 4 people that it could be, and you don't know until the very end which one it is.
Yeah.
And you kind of knew as the book progressed, the red herrings were kind of ruled out as you went along.
And they kind of just fell by the wayside. It wasn't like vetted out. It just kind of like, they just kind of stopped talking about it.
Yeah. It just
kind of like Jordan's partner at the very beginning of the book. What happened to that guy?
Hooray. Yeah. You hear they've been on 3 or 4 dates, but he's never shows up again in the entire book. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
things just kind of trail off, and you don't really get closure. But
again, the book took place over 15 years. So you kind of have to expect things to trail off because, you know, which again is different in this book than most books. Most books don't take place over 15 years. Most of them take place over a few weeks at most.
Right.
So,
and I think that's what I was expecting going into it.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize going into it that it was going to take place over, you know, 15, 20 years. But so I guess it makes sense that things would sort of fizzle out because it took place over such a large amount of time. So but I really enjoyed this book.
I did too. It was a good mystery and it had the romance element, and again that didn't overshadow the mystery.
No.
So that was, I feel like it was
for somebody who does not like romantic suspense. I like suspense, not romantic suspense. And this was just a perfect balance of romance, and in that it was 10% romance, 90% suspense.
And again, like she kind of she saved it to the end, like the really intense aspect of like, you know, oh my gosh, that just happened. Oh my gosh, that just happened. You know, now, that person got shot. That person what?
Now the next book may be more romance centric because now that they've decided he's professed his love. The next book,
I don't know that it's about them. I think it's more about that Nikki. So I don't know how much they would be in the next one.
Well, that's true. They may not.
It could be though.
Yeah. So anyway, so that
kind of focuses on a different character. I think
that
the next one does.
Is the book of Vanishing Point by Lisa Harris. So if you like mystery suspense books without romance, you're going to want to run and grab this book. I thought it was very well written.
And it's not very long. It's a short read. You can read it.
You can really, if you're an avid reader, you could probably read it in a few days. It took me a couple of weeks just because I've got a lot going on. I'm writing my own books and I'm working full time. So
just squeezing it in when you can.
I didn't rush through it. And I try not to rush through books when I'm reading for the podcast because I have to process each.
Well, and you make really good notes.
Yeah, well, I have to, especially without Melanie here. Now, when Melanie's here, I don't take this kind of notes because Melanie she has
recall.
Melanie can recall every detail of a book.
Right.
And I just don't have that gift.
You're like, now what happened? When did that happen?
Yeah.
You need little reminders. Like,
I do.
Okay, now, I remember.
If I tried to do it like Melanie does, I would be here. I'd be like, I literally would not.
Well, it was a book. About a thing.
It was a book, and it was about a serial killer. Go get it.
Yeah. There was stuff that happened in between there.
Yeah, exactly. So
hey, I think we did pretty good, Brett.
I think we did.
All right.
I really didn't think. I honestly thought this podcast would go for like 30, 45 minutes, and we're almost at 2 hours.
And I know we kind of went a few rabbit trails, you know.
Well, but honestly, that's kind of how we like to do it on the podcast. Like for me, I know for me as a listener, I don't want to just listen to just somebody
recapping
somebody giving a summarizing of a book. I want to hear anecdotes and you know, and just
some things about them or their life, maybe.
Yeah. So to me, I don't know if anybody else likes that, but I kind of like that. And that's what I feel like is different about. And I'm not a huge podcast listener. It's funny that I enjoy podcasting because I'm not a podcast person. Yeah. To me, it's kind of like listening to an audiobook. And I don't like audiobooks, you know, so
you got to make it like interesting and personalize it too.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what makes it more fun for me. So hopefully, but the few that I have listened to, there's not a lot of personal talk, like between the hosts. It's just more of a,
like, let's talk about the book.
And then we're done.
That's it.
Yeah. So hopefully people enjoy that about our podcast. So anyway, anything else you want to say?
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. This is really fun.
It is.
I enjoy doing this.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad I appreciate you stepping in while Melanie.
Absolutely.
So, Melanie better hurry up and come back or I may just have to replace her.
No, Melanie will not replace you.
We are not. Nobody can do this like Melanie. I always said I can't do this without Melanie, but Melanie could totally do this without me.
She could just by herself. I bet she could.
Yeah, she totally could. So, all right. Well, I think we're going to get off here. We're up at to almost 2 hours, so we're going to get off here. But come back in 2 weeks. We've got a book picked, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. My friend Charity is going to be with us next week, so
Awesome.
So you'll remember her from the last podcast. So
yeah, I bet it's fun for you having different co-hosts.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Mixes it up a little bit too.
Well, and it keeps my podcast co-host, my guest co-host from. Mm-hmm. I don't want to burn them out, to the point that, to the point they're like,
I don't want to do this anymore.
Because, people have families, people have, jobs and all that. Yeah. So anyway, so we will be back in 2 weeks with a book, and I can't remember what it is, or I would tell you. So you'll just have to come back next week and find out. So we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Bookish Introverts podcast, where together we explore the worlds within the pages. Until next time, stay bookish.